What's up, Warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I'm your host, Chris. I feel like this month of March has gone by so fast. We are on the 22nd, so this will probably drop in April. Um, Thank you guys so much for listening. It's been a steady moving podcast, been steady growth, but we're still moving, we're still chugging along. Um, Today's guest was a guest on my podcast, believe it or not, 2 years ago now. I can't believe it's already been that long. Um, if you guys listened to that episode, you'll be familiar with her work. If not, this might be your first time hearing her. So please help me welcome Heather. She is a holistic healer, and I'll let you introduce yourself with your new titles, Heather.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Like Chris said, my name is Heather. I consider myself to be a consciousness leader and spiritual healer. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on again. I can't believe it's already been 2 years.
I know, isn't that crazy?
I was looking at all the recordings and like there's no way that was 2022. And I'm like, wow, that was 2 years ago already. Um,
I know, time's
what have
flying.
you, uh, what have you been up to since then? You've had a lot going on.
Yeah, so when I was on here last, I was about 2 years into my practice as a life coach. So I was pretty much a one-man band. I was just taking clients like one to one. Um, and since then, of course, that was it always the goal was to expand on that and to be able to help more people because when you're only able to take one-on-one clients, you can only work with so many people. So since then, I developed a group program and now today, I've actually evolved my original foundation program. So my original foundation program was all about like how to heal from your past, how to overcome trauma, how to overcome limitations, how to overcome self-sabotage, how to move forward and get through all of that because I went through what, in spiritual terms, they would call a dark night of the soul. I lost my dad. I went through a traumatic divorce. And I went through a very suicidal period, and there was a point where my body started to shut down, and I heard a voice say, basically it gave me a choice, and it said, "You can die, or you can heal." And at the time, my daughter was only 8 months old, so of course, as soon as I heard this thought or this like you've got a choice here, I was like, okay, well, how do I heal? Okay, well, if I can heal and things can be different, I want to choose that. And so then that choice or that recognition of choice sent me down kind of the rabbit hole of like, well, how do I heal? What does it mean to heal? And can I actually get out of these patterns that I keep running into with these toxic relationships and my mental health, like struggling with anxiety and depression? Can I really break these patterns? And so, of course, for the next year after that question arose, I went down the rabbit hole of every type of research that I could possibly do. I, did different kinds of therapies. I read all the self help, the spiritual development, the chakra healing books. I read it all. I did it all like super fast because that's just kind of how I am. So, like, when I get my mind set on something, I become like a computer and I just like start absorbing information. And I love that. I think it's really cool. And so what happened through that era of research is I actually landed the opportunity to become a life coach because I was so interested in everything that I was learning. I kept talking about it to everybody, and they were like, "You should be a life coach. You should be a life coach." So then I got my certification. I became an energy healer and a meditation instructor. And through all of those certifications and all of the research and all of just applying everything that I was learning to myself and experiencing these things for myself firsthand, I was able to create, and like my personal system that I created was born. And so that for the first 2 years was the main thing that I did. And what I would call it is I kind of got to a place of mastery with it. So, like, once you get to a place of mastery, and especially like I'm pretty young, I'm only 26. So I have this will and this drive to keep going, to keep evolving, to keep expanding. So, where that path of healing and inner transformation and personal transformation of breaking those toxic patterns that I was in, which I actually wrote a book about. So I have an ebook that ebook that I sent you. You got it whenever you first came. It first came out, so you know what I'm talking about. It's called "Breaking Toxic Life Patterns: Simple Secrets to Heal Trauma Without Reliving It." And it's a pretty short ebook, and it's essentially me kind of using the tools that I teach in my program and telling my story and kind of giving a summarized view of what that looks like. So that's that first foundation. And what that eventually led me to, it actually led me into more of the spiritual realms and the manifestation and law of attraction and you know, essentially business growth and expansion as well. I went into a lot of these different classes where I learned a lot about online branding, online businessing, marketing, and then how to do all of this through a spiritual lens and not get lost in the money and the goals and all this other stuff that we can get lost in these like you know, oversaturated markets now with all these online businesses and coaches and entrepreneurs. There's so much disconnect in a lot of what's going on because they're so tied up in the money and the profits and the numbers and just getting people in no matter if they're actually serving value or not. And I, you know, me being here actually wanting to share something that I think is incredibly important, especially for mental health and this mental health movement. It's my passion to break these stigmas, to break these toxic cycles, so people can live a really authentic and beautiful, incredible, enjoyable life. And so for me, having these products online and wanting to stay in alignment with who I am and what I believe in and then you know seeing all this other stuff it can be really hard to break through all of that noise that's going on. So you know I've been working with spirit to do that, but it evolved to the manifestation and the law of attraction because of that, because I was like, okay, how can I do this differently? How can I market and how can I show up and put what I have to say out there in a different way? And
Right.
so that's really where I'm kind of at now. And there's so much more, but I'll let you go ahead because I can talk and talk. I'll let you go ahead and respond to that.
So one really important part that you brought up, like towards the beginning there, was, can I heal? I feel
Yeah.
that's a question that most of everybody who has gone through something traumatic or has gone through a rough patch in their life, I feel that's a question that so many of us run into because we don't know what that journey looks like into healing. And
Yeah.
the best part of healing is that there's so many different paths you can walk on. There's the holistic healing, there's the medicinal path of healing, there's therapy, there's group therapy. I mean, there's so many different avenues of healing, and I wish more than anything that everybody was more open-minded to want to heal, because in a world of fast information and technology and just getting everything with the click of a button and snap of a finger, I imagine how different of a world we would live in if everybody was on that path to healing, to
Oh, I
overcoming the
know.
needs. And one of the main reasons that I wanted to have you back on here, not only for Women's History Month, but also you were one of the pieces of the foundation of this podcast, and you brought in a lot of insight and of your work and everything. And I admire everything you do because you're always willing to put your foot into different doors just to see what's behind them, and like you said, absorb and be able to regurgitate to other people. I'm like, listen, this is the class that I took and this is what I got out of it that could help you. And another reason you talked about was your book. um I thought it was a very helpful book for somebody like myself who has gone through a lot of self-doubt, gone through a lot of self-esteem issues, and just trying to figure out where my purpose is in life. So let's go ahead and jump into that book without giving away too much. You covered things. You covered things from the foundation for transformation to self-love and acceptance. Do any of those chapters, like any one of those chapters, do any of them stick out to you the most, or are they all kind of like on the same level as each other?
So I would say they're all of equal importance. You know, it's funny. I'm actually in a class right now, and it talks about how we will only remember what's important to our story. Everything else we will forget. And even when someone is writing a book or when someone is making a movie, no one will ever know what all was originally there because whatever makes it to the end is what was meant to be there. Everything else gets cut, you know? And I feel like that's a lot of the way that I was feeling when I created my program. Because as somebody who is in the self-help industry and in this online community coaching industry, I've taken a lot of courses and I know that there's a lot of fluff and I've read these books and there's a lot of just, in my opinion, just like, can you get to the point kind of deal? Like, can you just like, let's get
Right.
here, let's get something of value going. And that's how I've always been. So I would say all of it. You know, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I really loved from my clients was sometimes, even if I was teaching something that felt a little bit basic, it was a really good reminder for them to kind of go back into that mindset so that they could really take back control of whatever pattern has got them in this downward spiral. And so even though some of the tools might be a little bit basic, I still think some of those basic tools are the foundational pieces that help you actually go deeper in what is more complex about it. So
Right.
I would say it's all pretty equal, but the ones that stick out to me the most are always going to be the ones where we have to dive into the limiting thoughts, the self sabotage, and the emotions. Those are the three biggest pieces. And then ultimately, what we get to, at least for me, the main thing and the main goal that I get my clients to and the people that come into my circle, the main thing that we're focused on here is not to change, fix, or solve any of these things. Even though the mind is like, yeah, well, what do you mean? Don't change, fix, or solve it. We want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it's not, that's not the goal. And essentially the process that I bring people through kind of helps you see we're not trying to get rid of that inner critic. We're not trying to get rid of the anxiety or the sabotager in your inner mind. We're not, what we need to do is there are parts of us that need to be addressed, that need to be acknowledged, that need to be heard and seen in ways they've never been heard or seen before because society teaches us to turn them off
Hmm.
and to run away from them and to dilute them and ignore them. And I want to say that I'm going to teach you to do the exact opposite. I'm going to ask you to face it. I'm going to ask you to face it head on. I'm going to ask you to have a conversation with it. I'm going to ask you to show some love and appreciation. Look for the gift, look for the blessing within those really uncomfortable thoughts and emotions and feelings and patterns that you're in, and we've got to face them head on and we've got to build a new relationship with them because it's within this new experience, this new perspective, this new relationship to these patterns, thoughts, and emotions that seem to be derailing you or sending you into these vicious cycles that you can't get out of, is what's going to essentially make them disappear or change. Because once you develop a new relationship with them, it's not necessarily that they go away, but the experience when they do come up is much different. Instead of it feeling like an enemy that's inside of you or trying to stab you in the back or drag you down or kill your dreams, you now are viewing it as, oh, hey, this is a part of me. This is a part of me that has a message for me. And this message can help me get over this hump or this place that I'm feeling stuck in. If I really just take a moment to not listen to what society has told me to be afraid of these things and to just go in and surrender into them, to lean into them a little bit, they have a loving, caring message for you. But society has taught us that they're scary, they're bad, you shouldn't feel these things. And then that makes us feel like we're crazy. And then we disconnect from ourselves so bad because we're running from ourselves in any way we can think of at that point.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things, the best advice I ever heard for somebody was feel your void, feel your feelings, and I feel that when it comes to depression, when it comes to anxiety, you can take the medicine that's prescribed to you if you want to, try and like calm down those voices or silence those voices or whatever the medication is supposed to do. Or you can face those voices head on and, like you said, address them head on. Those voices, there is a message behind all those voices. Be like, hey, you have something seriously going on in your life and it's constantly re-triggering. It's like when people say, drinking alcohol when you're depressed. Yeah, it's gonna, make you feel better for the night, but when you wake up, all of those problems are gonna be waiting for you when you wake up, when you're sober and have a hangover, and
Yeah.
I've always, I said on my last podcast, and I said it on a friend's podcast, that I I attribute healing to walking on glass. And, people don't know how to take that first step. You're
Yeah.
broken into a million different pieces, and each piece is going to hurt worse than the last one because you don't know what you want to take with you. And I feel that's one of the biggest things that people are so afraid of, is not wanting to hurt themselves again in order to heal. And that's all part of healing. It's all part of
Yeah.
getting a brick wall.
Yeah, and there's an analogy or a metaphor that I like to use, very similar to yours, just a different perspective, just to throw this out there. Um, I look at it a lot like, and this is how I talk to my clients about it too. It's the caterpillar. It's the journey from the caterpillar to the butterfly. Essentially, the caterpillar cannot become who it's truly meant to be, which is the butterfly. It cannot reach its full potential. It cannot fly without first entering into this dark cocoon where it is alone. It's in hermit mode. It has nothing, no family, no friends, no therapist, no nothing. It just itself and God, or the forces of the universe and how that
Right.
stuff works. And it goes in there and it has to melt down into goo, into the most vulnerable place that it can possibly bring itself to in order for it to shape. And then here's the next part of it. The caterpillar, if something helps the caterpillar break the chrysalis and come out of the cocoon, the butterfly will not be strong enough to survive. The butterfly has to do it alone. And so I know that this can be confusing because I'm not implying that people should deal with any type of mental stressors or issues alone.
Sure.
However, when someone comes into my space and they're working with me, I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to hold the mirror for what you're capable of, and I'm going to give you some step-by-step tools to go into those uncomfortable, vulnerable places so you're not alone. But what I mean by you have to do it alone, or you're not going to be strong enough to get out and to blossom into the butterfly you were always meant to be, is if you don't take those tools and you don't allow me to hold that space for you while you go in there yourself, because I can't go into your mind for you. I can't make you face it. I can't make you have the conversation.
Right.
I can guide you through it. I can hold your hand and hold space for it. I can guide you through it to make it easier so you can stay focused. Because that's probably the biggest thing that my clients enjoy about being with me is they have trouble meditating, and for good reason, right? Like they come from chaos or whatever. And so meditation can be a little tricky or confusing for a lot of my clients. So I, as a meditation instructor, can guide them really easily through these processes. And then they can build a new relationship with whatever they're experiencing inside of them. But just because they're doing it with me, they're still doing it all on their own. I can't make them do the interaction within their mind and their heart that they have to do. And it's within that interaction of the mind and heart, even if I'm here guiding you or helping you feel safe to do it, you're still doing it alone. And it's those moments that are going to make you strong enough to break free from those patterns, experience something new, and go into the butterfly that you're meant to be and be strong enough to maintain that. And essentially become a master of the thing in the process. And then as life throws these curveballs at you, because as long as you're alive, that's what's going to happen,
Right.
and you can probably confirm this for yourself. Every so often you're going to face something that makes you a little uncomfortable. And those are opportunities. Those are opportunities to apply all of your tools, to apply everything that you've learned, and to continue developing this relationship with you, because you get to live another day with you. And at this
Right.
point, you're getting better and better at enjoying that. Even if the outside world is throwing some chaos at you, you can handle it a little bit better because you now have you. Whereas before, when I was in crisis and I went through so many suicidal periods, the thing that was off was I didn't have me as my, best friend or my runner up or the person that could pull me out. But what changed, the biggest shift that changed, was not that I don't have any more problems or not that I don't have a bad day, but I'm my own best friend. I'm
Mm.
my own best pick me up now. And I have a solid foundation in that. And that doesn't waver because of this journey that I've taken, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought up the foundation again, because I was going to jump back to that earlier comment you made about going back to the basics. Um, going to therapy, again, I recommend for nearly everybody that I know is going through something. Therapy is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. That being said, like you just said about your foundation and it being strong, if you don't have a foundation to stand on, therapy is going to temporarily help you until you fall again. Because, if you don't have those basics, if you don't look in the mirror and say, "Hey, I love you," and do the work of healing, it's not just going to therapy and venting for an hour. It's you have to put in every piece of work in order to heal, whatever that means for you. So if that means, cut somebody out of your life, like my situation, if that means, having to cut off a toxic parent like I've had to do. There's so many different pieces of us that we need to visit in order to get on the right path of our healing journey. And the foundation is the very first step, and acknowledging that you're going through something. The next step can look different. It can look therapy, it can look talk to your friends about their experiences of what they're going through, look for programs. There's the greatest thing about all this technology and all the resources we have is that there are so many of them. There are so many resources for people going through stuff. And, like I said, the foundation is probably the top priority in anybody's journey of healing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said, for me, and my people that I tend to attract, this foundation was the reason I was able to prosper in my career and go deeper. And not only my career, but my personal life, being able to navigate a long term relationship that I'm in currently. Because if I've learned anything from getting into new relationships, even after healing, because it's like, this is so funny, actually. So before I met my partner, my current partner, my fiance, had already gone through all of that foundation and I had already, created it and had been teaching it for a couple of years at this point. And so at the time I was alone, I was single, I had been single, and I was managing myself pretty well. I was like, I never get triggered. I have good days every day. I am thriving. And then I meet this man, right? And he comes into my space, and now all of a sudden I'm challenged again and I'm triggered all the time and I'm losing it. And I'm like having to be like, I got rid of all of this stuff. Like I thought I was past all of it. So it was really awesome, looking back now to see how I did so well with myself as an individual and then was able to attract and open up myself for a new relationship. And I can definitely tell that had I had this same exact relationship without that healing, either we wouldn't be together right now or I'm not sure where we would be, because the only reason I believe we are as deep and as strong and as connected and as healthy as we can be, right, as a couple, because when we go through those intense lows with each other, we have this foundation, and sometimes he doesn't have the foundation, right, because this isn't his career, this isn't what he
Right.
does, but he still listens to me and learns from me when he can. But of course, you can only do so much when it's your wife. You've got to be smarter than your wife, right? So sometimes it's funny. I'll teach it or I'll say something to him and he won't take it right then, but then a few days later he'll say it back to me and I'm like, oh, I wonder where you heard that from.
I love
It's
that.
just so funny to watch it. But I will attribute all of my success in my personal and professional life with my daughter, with my soon to be husband, in my career, because of this foundation that I kind of outline a little bit in my book, that ebook that we've been talking about. And then of course there's a deeper course that people can take. It's called High Vibe Alchemy, because actually since all of this, I've expanded. So now I'm no longer a one man band. I actually have 3 other coaches that I've hired on. They've graduated all my programs, and so they can be support and empowerment coaches for what I'm doing. So I've actually changed my business name because I started my business and I just made up a name. I was like, I don't really like this, but I'll change it later. And now that and then I found it. So now my business is Soul Healer Institute. And so we have like an institute online. And so there's going to be multiple programs. So right now there's 2 available. It's High Vibe Alchemy and Manifestation Breakthrough. And what I was saying is, not only did that High Vibe Alchemy foundation that you can find the outline in my ebook, but not only did that foundation help my professional and personal life, like I'm talking, I would not be where I'm at. I would not be able to handle what I can handle without it. But it set me up for, like I said, it sent me into deepening my connection to spirituality, which I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not religious here, but I am very spiritual. So I do not follow any religious labels or dogma, any rules, conditions. Just unconditional love and authenticity here. And so, but without that connection of unconditional love and authenticity and the deities and the spirit team and the support that I've gotten from this spiritual realm, I genuinely can attest, I, Heather, wouldn't have been able to do any of
Right.
this because none of this came from me. If
Right.
you know what I'm saying, all
Mhm.
of this was channeled.
Mhm.
Everything that I have created up this far and will continue to create in the future will always be co-created and channeled with the divine. And that is so incredibly important to me because I take zero credit for anything out there other than maybe like my stories, like my personal experiences, right? And how I experienced the tools that I created. And when I say I created it, I wouldn't put anything out there unless I confirmed it with the divine. I was like,
Right.
should we do this one? Should we do this one? This one's a good one. Yeah, this one worked for me. I like this one. So I'm just like, I will not create anything unless I'm getting confirmation from the universe. So that's something that's a very big moral and ethical value that I hold close to me. I'm like, I'm not putting anything out there unless you confirm it.
Well, first of all, I just want to say again, congratulations on the engagement. Super happy for you. You absolutely deserve it.
Thank you.
Um, and also congratulations on the institute. That's incredible. Um,
Yes.
2 years is a lot there. Um,
Yes.
so since we spoke last, I saw you did a couple different podcasts. I know you started out hosting one with somebody, and then are you still doing that?
So I was on a podcast with one of my friends for a little while, but it became a little bit too much for me energetically. So then I took a step back and took a break from that. And she started a new season. She continued that one. And so what I did was I have a group on Facebook, and it's called Soul Alchemy. I'll get you the links because my brain, I have so many links, so many things going on now. So anyways, I have a soul alchemy group. And I was going live every week just with little tips or just like little motivations, and some stories or whatever, just to help. And what I decided was instead of doing these weekly little teaching lives, I was just going to take that time that I had for that and do my own podcast. And so I started my own podcast called Healing for the Soul, which has 1 season out right now, with a total of 9 episodes. All 9 episodes are prepared by me only. And I literally worked incredibly hard to create, to write the scripts, to record them. I just poured it all through the channel. And it was a lot of work. It took me up to like 3 to 4 days just to write an episode and get it recorded and get it edited and published. So I worked really hard for 9 weeks straight there. And so now we're finishing up Manifestation Breakthrough, the videos for that for Soul Healer Institute. And so I took a couple of weeks off these past few weeks. And when I come back, it's going to be season 2. And I'm actually going to be doing episodes with my coaches that have
Nice.
been in my program that are now my coaches. So it's going to be me and my coaches kind of going back and forth on healing, the healing journey, manifestation journey, and like what is healing and what is manifestation and versus what's not, like the mainstream that's not going to work, these things that they're trying to whatever. And then also our own personal experiences where people think, like you were saying, people might think healing or manifestation is all rainbow and sunshine, the spiritual journey, the healing journey, the self-discovery, the inner work. It's not rainbow and sunshines. And we're going to have to dive into these really uncomfortable topics such as addiction and daddy issues and all these other things that me and a lot of the women that I attract experienced. We went through a lot of sexual trauma. We went through a lot of verbal abuse and just different things that we face just as women. And I love that you mentioned that we got to do this for Women's Month. And so that's super exciting to talk about that. But yeah, so we're going to talk about these really uncomfortable topics because my passion, I think, the most out of anything that I do is to say things that people wouldn't normally say.
Right.
Is to just talk about things like postpartum depression, to talk about things about like molestation and rape and stuff that's just not talked about because it makes people uncomfortable. And I'm so sorry that it makes people uncomfortable, but it's happening. It happened to me multiple times. And I have a little daughter that I am going to make sure to the best of my ability it doesn't happen to her. And from my experience, the only way these things are not going to happen is if we talk about them and we get real about them.
Absolutely.
And so season 2 of the podcast is not started just yet as of the recording of this podcast with you, but it's coming out here into the next couple of weeks. And so we're excited to go in. I know we've already recorded the first 2 episodes and it was more about like self-image, body image. But as we continue on, we've got a whole bunch to talk about. We're going to talk about doctors. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff and our opinions on it. It may not be for everybody. If you're easily offended, you might not want to come check it out. But I want to talk about these things because they're real important to me. I lost my mom last year. And so dealing with all of that, and being her caregiver and going to these doctors with her and like asking these doctors, like, what are you actually doing to like figure this out? And they couldn't give me a solid answer. And it really sent me into this, wow, our doctors now, of course, unless it is like you get in a car wreck or you've got like you need a replacement, right? Like something like this. Yes, I love modern medicine, but there are some things, just some things that modern medicine and doctors just don't know about. And part of that is disease in the body. Any disease in the body is going to come from your emotional, mental, and spiritual health. And that is where someone like me, a holistic healer, would come in. I would consider myself a holistic doctor, but obviously I didn't go to school. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a holistic doctor because I read energy and I can read these things and I can know where these things can come back from. And it's usually stress.
Yeah.
And the epitome of this stress can usually come back to our frustrations, emotions, sabotage, and limitations, and all of those things that I talk about in the book. Because all of those things, the emotions, the sabotage, and the doubts, the self-doubt, the poor self-image, the low self-esteem, the lack of confidence, all of that is underneath the stress. And if the stress is creating the disease, then the root of this is those things and not anything else that a doctor, and the doctors are not going to be like, well, have you healed from trauma and all this other stuff? Have you looked into your unresolved emotions and your unresolved thought patterns? They're not going to ask you these questions. And so that's why they're typically just covering up the stress with a band-aid, and they're not getting you down to the root cause of it, which is actually the thing that's capable of healing these these death-ridden diseases where people are told they have no way out, and that's just not true. And science and different people are proving that every single day when they use their mind to get right out of it.
Mm-hmm. And to talk on the doctor thing very briefly, I think the biggest problem of modern day medicine is so many doctors, whether it's the mental health field or whether it's in our hospitals and doctors' offices, are looking to treat the symptom and not the cause. And
right.
Like you said, like they just want to put a Band-Aid on it and send you on your way. In 2000, what was it, 16 or 17, I had a mild concussion. And they sat me in the room and I was in there for like 30 minutes, 35 minutes or something. And I couldn't see straight. I was really dizzy. And when the doctor came in, she's like, oh, what are you in here for? And I said, I may have a concussion. I'm not sure. I can't see straight. Like, I don't feel good. And she yelled at the people who brought me in the room. She's like, why didn't anybody tell me that this could be a head trauma situation? Because you can die from a concussion. And,
Right.
thankfully it wasn't a severe concussion, but it was bad enough to where I was out of work for 4 days. And, you know, I had a holistic healer on, I believe 2 guests ago. We talked about the doctor thing as well, how so many doctors just, they want the money. That's all they want.
Right.
They don't want 100% cure you, because then you won't go back to them and be like, oh, this isn't working. Um,
Right.
and it's such a tough conversation because, like you said, with the topics you're going to cover in your second season, all those taboo subjects. And I think doctors are a really, really big taboo subject that not nearly enough people will talk about openly, because of the fear of being canceled, being, pushed down, or being blacklisted off of something. So, I mean, unfortunately, there's only so much that one can say on a public platform, but I'm 100% with you in thinking that doctors only care about the bottom line, and that's their pockets. That being
And
said,
again, I never, I try not to do the, always and never in everyone situations, because I definitely believe I don't like to marginalize a whole entire thing. And like I said, it's not everything in the medical system that I think is broken or wrong. I think that there are things that if they would, invite some of the Eastern, philosophies into the process, I think we would have a more well-rounded. But again, it comes back down to this money situation where so many people, there's too many over here that prefer the money than prefer to see people happy and healthy. I think that that's the biggest problem. I think it's the mindset. And, um, you know, I think that that's one of the big reasons why money is considered to be the root of all evil, but it's really always just meant to be a tool for us. It's just
yep,
meant to be a tool for us. And it's my personal belief that money is a physical representation of God or the universe. And just as anything is, just as you or I and anything on my desk, this computer, it's all this just a physical representation of the infinite spirit. And but it's when we get into this mindset of survival. And again, anybody who's got this like mentality of I've got to get money, I've got to get money, that and they're choosing money, they're choosing this route over something that might actually be helpful and might actually cure something. um that is a symptom of those are limiting beliefs, those are symptoms of self-sabotage, those are symptoms of being disconnected from your authentic self, from your true self. And there are so many people in all types of jobs and industries, even in my industry, even in the self-help industry, in the spiritual, that you see the documentaries. I can't stand it. You see the documentaries on Netflix of people exploiting and using people and using these systems and self-help and spirituality and personal development to scam people and to hurt people and to make them and to brainwash them into thinking this is the way, and get them sucked into these MLM, like whatever. You know what I'm saying? And these cycles just repeat, and then people are not actually getting helped, and they're being abused by these concepts of medicine or holistic healing, or and we're not the only ones. I'm sure this is happening in all kinds of industries, but it's just wild.
yeah, the fact that the holistic healing side of things is so villainized is awful. I hate seeing it. Um, so, opportunities seem to be, you know, lining up to bless you, and it's so great to see. Again, I'm so happy for your success and everything that has come your way so far. Um, I saw that you got invited to a holistic law studies party. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. So in Richmond, Virginia, there's a guy named Charlie, and he has started he got this practice. So he's calling it Holistic Law Studios. And so it's a new thing they're trying to develop. And basically they're trying to get to a place where they can host like biannual events. And maybe you've ever been to like outdoor events where there's tents and like maybe there's tarot readers or energy healers or whatever, all set up in these tents. Well, he's got a building with different rooms, and one of the rooms, he's got it set up to do his podcast, and then there's just other rooms. So essentially what he's going to do is he's trying to get it to where he can kind of rent out the space to other healers so that they can do like their own events. So they like rent the space, bring people and do sessions for them in person. So maybe it's for someone maybe like me. Currently, I don't have like a physical in-person space. So but I don't live in Virginia, so it's not that
Right, right.
easy for me. But if something like that was here, I could rent a space, I could invite people in that way. And so basically that's what he's kind of trying to do, is to have these biannual events where there's this big group of people, or just in at any time people can kind of, it's like a hairstylist booth renting, so it's like a healer coming into booth rent there, so it's kind of cool. And basically he invited me out because I'm more established. I've been doing this for a little bit longer, so I have a little bit more information and knowledge of how they can kind of pick it up and launch everything. And they basically invited me out to just kind of introduce myself, introduce my resources as a collaborator. So I'm kind of just somebody who's supporting them in their new adventure and their launch and their growth and their scaling. So I'm honored to support them in that. And I was really honored that they were so impressed by where I'm at and like my work that I do personally, that they wanted me to come out and introduce myself and my personal resources. And I was able to network with the other people there, because there was a lot of other leaders.
Yeah.
Because that event specifically was just for leaders to come in and kind of get to know the space. And I was really blown away and honored that he wanted me to come all the way from Tennessee and speak and get advice from me. So that was really cool. But yeah, so it was the first time that I ever spoken like in front of a crowd in person. So and I was like, is this going to be hard? Am I going to stumble, or is this going to be very natural? And thankfully, like he was like, I want Heather to come on up here and just talk a little bit. And there was no microphone, so it was real casual. So I just went up in front of everybody. I was like, this is my name, this is where I come from, this is my background, and it just kind of came out, and everybody was like, that was amazing. And I was like, I've never
That's so
done that before.
that's awesome. What an experience. I'm trying to look into doing some public events for mental health stuff, and it's so hard because like they want people with an official title or they want people with a degree to do stuff like that. And it's like I've tried to reach out to NAMI to see if like, if they're gonna do something with high schools and stuff and see if I can be a public speaker in some capacity. And it's really hard to put your foot in that door and be able to speak to stuff like that. So seeing that, when I was writing this up, I'm like, oh, I definitely want to bring that up because, I know how big you are on networking, and, it's cool that they see all the things that you're doing, that they wanted to invite you to do something like that. So do you have any future projects that are, upcoming besides your second season of the podcast? Do you have anything that you wanted to share with us?
Well, it's funny that you say that. I've got a couple of things coming up in terms of speaking events or anything like that. As somebody who is really strong in manifestation and law of attraction, I don't really look for things like that. It just kind of comes to me. And because I completely understand your frustration, because I'm not to say I have never tried to look for situations or applied for different speaking roles, but none of that ever works out for me when I'm seeking it or when I'm trying really hard to go get it. And that's a lot about what I teach in my manifestation breakthrough program is when you come here, there is no work to do. You're going to stop chasing. You're going to stop working so hard, and you're going to start attracting it to you. But I totally know what you mean by there's just got to be this level of authority or credibility or experience. And so no future things that I want to announce. I'm working on a 4-part little free mini course. But right now it's just an outline. I haven't even got it scripted or recorded or anything, so I have no idea when that's going to be out. But I'm hoping to use that as kind of an icebreaker for people who don't know me and and want to know more about what I teach and what they're going to get before they join the Soul Healer Institute programs. So that's kind of my next thing on my to-do list in terms of my career. But other than that, I definitely anticipate more speaking gigs, but I just don't look for them because another thing, like the 2 speaking gigs that I've gotten, and even with you, like, I mean, I put myself out there,
Yeah.
obviously. But like, people tend to come to me, and all I have to do is kind of show up. And the Professional Podcast Network, they called me out of the blue. And this story is so funny, because a lot of what I teach about manifestation is just simply showing up through the eyes of the child, saying yes more and more every single day to the things that would bring you joy, and saying no to things that you just don't want to do. Kind of get a vision of what you want your life to look like, and every opportunity you have, follow that path. Needless to say, in the beginning, of course, you're already on this one path, so you're gonna have to actively try to step into the new path. But every opportunity you get closer and closer to that new experience that you're wanting to create. And so part of that for me is just being in the eyes of the child, remaining in a joyful state. And I remember, I usually don't answer like numbers that I don't know. I usually ignore them, but I was just like laying in bed, playing around, and like this New York number started to call me, and I was just being so silly. I was like, "Oh, New York is calling. I must answer this." And so I answered, and I was like, "Hello." And they were like, "Hi, is this the owner of Soul Healer Institute?" And I'm like, "Oh God, yeah, it is. What do you mean?" And I was like, I was so scared. I was like, "Is this a scam?" I was like, "What's happening?" And they're like, I'm like, "How did you find me?" Because really, even as of right now, as of this recording, like, I mean, I'm pretty public, but I run ads. I'm not like everywhere. I'm not viral. Because I'm not mainstream. I'm not telling you you're going to manifest millions by Mondays, because that's crap. So I'm not mainstream, I'm not viral. So I was like real concerned. I was like, "How did you find me?" And I was like, "So how do you know me and what's happening?" And they're like, "Well, we have this team who scours the internet looking for the best of the best. We picked you. We loved your work." And I was like, "This is so weird." It's
Wow.
like, if this is not
That's
the
awesome.
universe, then I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Yeah, I want to do an interview with you guys." And it was just a short little 5-minute interview. But they even called me back after, and they're like, "We have not really had statistics like this on those small little 5-minute interviews." And so it was really cool. So I definitely anticipate more speaking events, but I just kind of let them come to me, because I
Yeah.
find if I try, and I think that intuitively for you, Chris, I think that the same thing is going to happen to you. You
Yeah.
keep showing up, because it already has multiple times just from you showing up on this podcast. So I wouldn't worry about your credentials, your authority too much, or trying to get these titles. If you feel called to, or if the opportunity comes up and you want to take it, sure, go for it. But I definitely think that if you're meant to have those speaking gigs, and if you're wanting to, if you're feeling called to it, then that's kind of an indicator that you're meant for it, right? And so just let it, my suggestion is, I would say, keep showing up the way you're showing up, keep putting yourself out there in these types of situations, and networking through the podcasting, and it'll come to you
Yeah.
at the best miraculous time.
Yeah, when I did the NAMI event, I believe it was last year. I think that was probably one of the coolest experiences that I've ever got to do, because it was a 4-person panel, and we were all men talking about men's mental health, addiction, and all and things like that.
Yeah, I remember. I checked it out. That was cool.
Yeah, it was awesome to have that kind of experience, because those opportunities don't come very often, and it
Right.
was one of those it came to me kind of thing. So I mean, you're right.
Yes.
You're right. I mean, it's you keep showing up, and opportunities present themselves to you, and I think it's just hard sometimes, because being a content creator, and I think you might be able to attest to this, sometimes when the growth just kind of levels off, and you're not getting all those listeners, you're not going into another country like you were before, and sometimes you get discouraged. But like you said, just keep plugging away, keep showing up, and I definitely believe in manifesting 100%. And I think you're a very, 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 very big example of how well manifesting works. So I do appreciate those words. And yeah, it's definitely hard to keep telling myself that things are going to come, but I know they will.
No, and here's the beautiful thing. There's a story from J.K. Rowling. Well, it's not a story. It's like, if you look at her life and how she got to where she is, she was a single mom who came from hardship and struggle, and she didn't probably have a whole bunch of positive self-talk. She wasn't perfect. She was probably going through a lot of chaos and stress, but she just felt it so hard that, she's meant to write. I just want to write and be able to take care of my baby. I just want to write and take care of my baby. And even though her frequency wasn't like probably,
Right.
Buddhist level, right? And that's, I think, a big misconception with manifestation is you have to have your frequency up here. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
I will say that when I'm in my childlike high frequency or whatever, cool things happen, sure. But what's meant for you is going to come to you regardless of your frequency. And, obviously, I don't, she went through all of that and eventually Harry Potter was born and now she's a freaking billionaire and she's got bad media and you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. She got what she asked for and it was because she stayed persistent with it throughout, no matter what on the surface she was going through, the toxicness, the abuse, the struggle. On the surface, she never let go of that core like mission that she had, even if her frequency wasn't high enough for it. You know what I mean?
So you had mentioned protecting your daughter and just continuing to play the role of mom and or not play the role. I'm sorry, that was wrong phrasing. You get what I mean when I said that.
Yeah, yeah.
But protecting her and everything. So since we talked last, 2 years has gone by. What new things are you showing her to, I guess, express herself when she's struggling with something, or if she's having any problems that she doesn't know how to deal with, if she can express that?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes there's really no like black or white answer to this. It really is just like in the moment because I'm a very intuitive person, and I'm definitely not perfect by any means. So it really just depends on what version of myself is available in that minute whenever she's having a hard time. But for the most part, and it also depends on why she's having a hard time too, right? Because sometimes she's having a hard time when she's being punished. And of course, punishment for me is like you're not listening, you're disrespectful, you have an attitude, and you need to go sit in timeout. And then, of course, that hurts her feelings and she's having a hard time. And so we just do our best to say it's okay to have a hard time, it's okay to cry, but my biggest thing that I'm trying to teach her right now is how to recognize why she's in timeout. Because if I say, "Why are you in timeout?" she says, "Because I'm having a hard time." And I'm like, "No, you're not punished because of your emotions, honey." And then so it takes a minute, she's 4. So right now, where I'm at with it, it just has to be intuitive. Sometimes I'm the tough love mom, sometimes I'm the gentle mom. And I definitely don't take a whole bunch of parenting standards or ideas to heart. I just intuitively go with whatever it is in the moment. And for the most part, I'm not, as a parent, I'm not going to see how that's affecting her. And I've learned that because she's in preschool. But my confirmation that what I'm doing is helping, even if on the surface it looks like I'm being a bad mom, or I feel like I'm being a bad mom, or I didn't do it right, or whatever. Even if on the surface I feel that way, I get confirmation when I pick her up from her preschool saying she's so mature, she's so helpful, she can work through her emotions so
I love it.
well, and I'm like, well, that's great because at home she's not really at home. It's different. I get the chaos of her because I'm her safe place. And so when she goes to school, though, it's reflecting how I'm kind of handling that, even if me as a mom feel like I'm not doing it right or perfect in the moment. And it really helps me give myself grace and confirmation that, hey, I'm going to blow up on her sometimes, but maybe that's what she needs. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, because the truth of the matter is, my mom traumatized the hell out of me. And but as when I became an adult and in the last 4 years, and even in the last year, when I was her caregiver, I was grateful for a lot of the stuff that a lot of her mistakes that she made because it made me so independent. And so I know that I'm different from my mom, but I've definitely accepted that I might cause a little trauma or a little chaos for my daughter, but she needs me too, or the world will. Because if I don't, and I don't also kind of help her if I can, because that's another thing, kids don't want your kids don't want your help. Your kids do not want mama's help. And same with your husband. You know, it's like husbands and kids, when it comes to mom, you can't be a prophet in your own house. And so that's just how it is. But I do my best. And like I said, in both my husband and my daughter, I notice that they pick it up, even if
Mm,
it's not immediately. And or I don't get to experience the benefit of what I teach them sometimes, but other people do. And
right.
so I see that. And so that is cool for me.
Yeah, it's great for a kid to have that balance because I feel, especially in today's world, a parent will just give a kid an iPad and just be like, "Oh, well, you're bad. Here's an iPad. Go away. Go in your room." Um, so it's essentially, with the question you ask her of, why are you in timeout? It's kind of like an accountability thing, without
Yeah.
it being exactly that. Um, but that's great to hear that like she feels safe with you and that she knows that she'll get loving mom, but she'll also get the mom that'll put her ass in check if she needs it.
She'll
Um,
get crazy mama sometimes.
right. And it's great to see because I feel one of the biggest things missing in today's world and just like with kids in general is that love and compassion, but also that balance of accountability and
Well, they
discipline.
need it. You know, what I understood for a long time, it was really hard, especially from that transition from like 2 to 4, so between, because when she's 2, as a mom, you're like, she's a baby, she doesn't know any better. And then you kind of coddle them. But once they get into like 3 and 4, you start to notice that they're a little bit more aware, they're a little bit more conscious, and now they're manipulating you, they're playing you hard, they're doing all kinds of stuff, and they're making you think that they don't know what's right, but they do know
Right.
what's right. And then you get real confused. So there was a big period when I was like, oh my God, how can I punish her? Like, I feel like she needs a spanking, or I feel like she needs this or that or whatever. But I feel so bad if I yell at her or if I spank her. I have all this mom guilt. And I just kept praying about it, talking to the universe. And essentially, the answers kind of came to me through my community. And it became very clear to me that kids need the punishment, especially from their mom or dad, because even though it might hurt their feelings and it might hurt your feelings worse, right? They actually will respect you more and be safer in life because they want that. Because I remember when I was a kid, I actually didn't have a lot of that punishment. And I was a big brat and I ran the world and I didn't listen to anybody. And that's how I was when I was a kid. And I think that that really resonated with me. Like nobody ever stopped me. And that's why I was, in situations where I was molested or raped, or in these situations where I was around drugs and strangers and bad things, because I ran my world. I was never punished. I was this adolescent who thought she knew it all. And so I would end up in a lot of these toxic situations because I was never punished. And
Right.
so I might feel really bad about punishing her sometimes, but I think it could be the thing that keeps her out of those situations that I was in. And it's because she knows that I'll tell her when she's wrong, or when she needs to listen, or when she needs to grow up. And I won't have that filter. And I'm not going to be this parent who's absent emotionally, whether it's a good day or a bad day. I'm there for both. And so she really can't outrun me at this point.
Right.
And
Right.
I feel like I'm covering all the grounds, because now I'm not beating myself up anymore when I have to punish her, because that was
Good.
a big thing that I had to overcome as a mom, was that mom guilt for punishing her. Because and I love the ideas of gentle parenting, but sometimes gentle parenting just doesn't work.
Right.
And at least for me, my kid needs a balance of gentle and hard.
Yeah.
She just does.
Right.
She's a Scorpio, so
So as you may remember, I usually ask all my guests this. I believe I asked you when I first interviewed you. Um, so maybe we'll get a different answer from 2 years ago. Actually, not maybe. I know it'll probably be a different answer, but if you could change one thing in this mental health community now that you contribute to it as heavy as you do now, what would it be?
I think that if I could change something, it would be the thing that's coming up for me is like open-mindedness to the illusion of the fear of the mental health. Because I think I think society and individuals fear mental health and like awareness of mental health so hard that they won't allow themselves to actually go into those deep places like we were talking about earlier, and like get to know your anxiety, get to know your depression, have conversations with these parts of you, and kind of go in and connect with these things that feel like your enemy, and have a new relationship with them. And so if I could change anything, I think it would be the illusion of the fear around it.
I love that. Before we wrap up today's episode, where can our listeners find you?
The best place to find me and just keep up with me is going to be facebook.com/ holistic healer Heather. You can find my Facebook group there. If you're local or near my area, I have yoga groups that meet at our local park. And eventually, I would love to turn that into an in-person and virtual thing. So you can follow that, keep that going, keep up with that on my Facebook. And also, you'll find my links there. My website is soulhealerinstitute.com. So right now, my website, the current website is under construction, but you can still go to my old website and it's kind of up to date, but not really. It's a little outdated. But we're updating it currently. So by the time maybe this podcast is out, it'll be ready. So that's soulhealerinstitute.com or facebook.com/ holistic healer Heather. Those are the best places to find me or find more about my podcast or what I do or my school. And yeah.
Awesome. So at the end of every podcast, as you remember, I like to read a quote based on, the conversation, or, just like a quote that I found was very powerful. I've been reading this book. It's called Crossroads Reflections, basically about this man named Tony. And I was talking to my therapist, and she thinks that it'd be really cool to read, a passage out of there that was pretty powerful. So this one is from March 11th, and it reads, I have so often lived as if existence were inside a closed box. I defined life by the walls, and then I heard a knock from outside, and everything changes. Um, you know, Opportunity, like we were talking about, manifesting things, and we're so confined by our fears and so confined by, just life and all the stresses that come with it. So I always feel it's important to, like you said, the open-mindedness and, to fight that illusion of fear and step outside of your comfort zone. For me, I feel that one really stuck out to me just because of being stuck, not really understanding what my purpose is. And I'm sure you've gone through that. I know so many others have too. But I think for those of you who want to read some pretty profound, heavy passages, man, I highly recommend this book. It's a daily affirmation, daily stories. I'll skip a couple days and then just like catch up just so I can get a bunch of information and absorb it and regurgitate to you guys and just give you my perception of it. But yeah, I just wanted to read that to you guys, and thank you again so much, Heather, for being on today's podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, for all my listeners, this will drop, I believe, in April. I don't remember the exact date it's going to drop, but thank you guys always for your support. As always, be gentle with yourselves. Until next time, take care and much love.